Good morning. On this week's edition of The Professor Helps, which is your big ups to living your life, being motivated, being inspired, and sometimes even getting a little frustrated. I want to talk to you a little bit about boundaries. I have definitely mentioned boundaries on my YouTube before, and I think that something that I do when I'm stressed is try to look for the bright side. It's really difficult to find a bright side when the last report showed that there were 251,000 deaths in the coronavirus, and that's what we know about, and that's what's been reported. And there's also been, just take a second and take that in. 251,000 people have died. And that's staggering to me, and that's horrible. And I am shocked and horrified that that isn't being reported more widely. We aren't talking about that more. This is a really, really horrible disease that is sweeping the country. And it doesn't discriminate. It can touch anybody. There are definitely people who are at higher risk, which you've probably heard a lot about, but anybody over 65, anybody who is immunocompromised, anybody who has a health condition like diabetes or anything like that, they're more susceptible to this thing. And I don't know about you. I can't speak for anybody else. I can only say that in times of stress, in times of trouble, which, let's face it, this is definitely a time of stress and trouble, I try to look for the bright side. It's a coping mechanism, so here goes. One of the things that I think is good about this horrible pandemic is it gives you the opportunity to reset some boundaries. What do I mean by that? Well, you have to limit the amount of space you have between yourself and another person. That's been set aside by the Centers for Disease Control. The CDC has offered you the opportunity to tell another person, I need you to step away. I need you to distance from me. So this would probably be a really good time to reset some other boundaries as well. What do I mean by that? Well, we're doing everything virtually, right? Everything's on Zoom. We're doing FaceTime. There's a lot of connecting without actually seeing the person, right? So if you are always available and you're always there to take that call or click on that meeting, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And I definitely have seen my share of articles talking about self-care activities with lists a mile long, and that's definitely not what I'm talking about. This is just one thing that you can do. And I know this sounds crazy, but when you get an invite to a Zoom meeting, really consider before you hit that join button. Now, while I am not talking about work, because I know that for work you really can't not join a Zoom meeting, but maybe that's worth examining too. Do we really need 20 meetings a day? Like I've been hearing from some of my friends who are having 20 meetings a day. Do all of those meetings need to happen? Even if you took one less meeting a day, maybe that would help. And if you get an invite to a Zoom or a happy hour or a yoga class or something that, you previously maybe would have said no to, consider saying no to it again. Just because we're all home does not mean that we're all available. And I think that in this time of stress and difficulty, it's really more important now than ever to say no when you don't want to do something. And recognize that you're going to be a little less patient with other people and you're going to be frustrated. And I can't speak for you. I can only speak for me. I know that I am definitely a little bit more sensitive right now. I'm crying a little bit more. It doesn't take much to set me off. I'm trying very, very hard to live in the respond camp instead of the react camp. And controlling your response to something, it ain't easy, but it's worth it. It's worth it to take the time and, try your best to not react, but rather respond. And that's a boundary in and of itself. You will note that though I am working from home, I am dressed, got jewelry on, things like that. What am I dressing for? I'm dressing for the dog? No, that's a boundary for me. It's a boundary for me to get dressed for work every single day like I'm going into the office, because I'll be going back to the office soon. And it's a boundary for me because when I do that, I officially say, okay, I'm entering into the realm of work. Now, if you are working in your sweatpants and happy doing it, more power to you. I'm talking about the fact that for me, it's a boundary. And I don't know about you. I've definitely found myself perceiving slights that aren't there, being frustrated about things that, really I don't have any control over. So I think that a big part of this is setting the boundary for yourself, and not just the physical boundary, although that's a good one to review, because just as the politicians decided it was a good idea for us to start slowly reopening, that doesn't mean you shouldn't wear a mask. And I talked about this last week. Wear a mask, people. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it other than it's a really simple thing you can do to protect yourself and to protect other people. So my husband had a great explanation for this. You wear a seatbelt, right? Nobody questions that. You wear a seatbelt because you're hoping that you never have to use it. You drive defensively, you do many, many things to avoid the seatbelt being the last line of defense, right? So you are doing everything that you can, which is to social distance, and then put your mask on. Just wear your mask. Yes, I know it's uncomfortable. I know it's not easy to see the other person. I know that it's hard to breathe sometimes. I know that it's difficult. But the alternative is that, somebody who is asymptomatic could sneeze on you, but in fact have the virus, and then you have it. And because you didn't wear a mask, you could now have the virus. And the biggest thing that we can do to stop this thing is to flatten the curve. So stay home as much as you can, unless you're essential. And if you're essential, I understand. My heart goes out to you. Just do whatever you can do to make yourself safe. I know a lot of people who are essential workers who are working every day. They're taking precautions. They're wearing masks. They're wearing gloves. They're doing everything they can do. And I implore you to do the same, because the only hope we have of stemming this tide of death is by setting that boundary. Who knew boundaries were going to be this important? So I would say that the Centers for Disease Control have done you a big favor. They've done their part. They've told you that you need to have less than 10 people in a room, that you need to have 6 feet of distance between yourself and another person at any given time. Now it's up to you. What boundary do you need to set? So think about that as you walk into your day. And this is the Professor Helps. This is my weekly time to inspire you, motivate you, and I'm thinking sometimes I'm going to frustrate you too, because there are things that frustrate me. Like, I'm frustrated when people don't wear a mask, and so this is my platform. I'm going to use it to talk to people about wearing masks, because it is the simplest thing that we can do. A perfect example of that is how tired we all get. I don't know about you, having trouble sleeping. I don't know about you, but it's one of those things that, the less sleep I get, the less likely I am to respond rather than react. So it's all connected. And I think that as you proceed, think about what you can do to be kind to other people. And if you see someone not wearing a mask, point to yours. And if you're not wearing a mask, wear a mask. Please, I am begging you. It's the kind of thing that you can do. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not a scientist. But I do know that there's a lot of science out there that suggests that it's not a good idea for us to be out and about in our normal pre-coronavirus way. And there's a lot of people out there acting like this is not a huge global pandemic and people are not dying of this thing. The current number is 251,000 deaths. I want you to think about that. And while you think about that, put your mask on and go out there and be kind to other people. Just point to your mask so people can see that you're committed to their health. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the Professor Helps. If this helps you, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And more importantly, share it with someone that you know who maybe could use a little bit of inspiration, motivation, and yes, a little bit of frustration. This is the professor signing off.